My hands still smelled like trout when I stepped into the kitchen. I'd been out since first light, casting my line off a quiet pier near the old lighthouse south of town. Didn't catch much, just 2 average-sized fish, hardly worth bragging about. But I liked the calm, the slow movement of the water, and the way the wind sometimes cut across my face like a slap that reminded me I was alive. It wasn't even noon yet. Usually, I'd stay out longer, but I had this fridge problem. The damn thing kept acting up, and I knew if I didn't get more ice in there, my catch would rot. The motor had been making that stuttering sound for a couple of days. My wife, well, the woman who was my wife, kept telling me to just call a repair guy. I kept saying I'd handle it. Truth is, I didn't want some stranger rummaging through the kitchen, telling me the fridge was beyond hope. I don't like throwing things out unless I'm sure they're done for. But that's me, stubborn, slow to accept what's broken. I set my rod against the wall in the garage. My back was kind of stiff. 52 years old, not exactly the spry kid I used to be. Fishing used to be easy on me. Nowadays, I feel it in the knees when I kneel down to get the gear out of the trunk. I remember rolling my shoulders a bit, trying to chase away that dull ache. Then I grabbed the cooler with the fish, walked inside, and saw the blinking light on the kitchen clock. The power must have flickered again. Great. Just one more thing to add to the list. The house was quiet. Usually, she'd be in the living room, watching some show or messing with her phone. Or if it was a weekday, she might be at work. But that day was a Saturday, so I expected her around. I didn't call out. Didn't feel the need. I just put the cooler on the counter, opened the fridge, and noticed the temperature didn't feel right. It was warm in there. The interior light was on, but that motor was silent. A bad sign. My fish wouldn't last the day if I didn't get ice. I cursed under my breath, shut the fridge door, and decided I'd get the big plastic tub from the garage, fill it with ice from the store. That would buy me some time. Before heading out, I thought I'd go upstairs to change. My boots were leaving wet marks on the kitchen tile, and I figured I'd want a quick rinse before hauling ice around. So I climbed the stairs. They squeaked under me, same as always. That squeak used to annoy me, but you'd get used to it. Like white noise in the background. I walked down the hallway. Her perfume sort of lingered in the air, some floral thing she liked. Smelled strong. I remember thinking, must be new. I reached the bedroom door, and paused because I heard a sound. A weird, muffled grunt. Then a laugh. I couldn't make out words, but it was enough for me to know something was off. At first, I assumed maybe she was watching something on her laptop. But the door was open a crack, and I saw skin. Bare skin moving. I froze. My eyes adjusted, and I realized that was her back. Her hair was pinned up in some messy bun, and her arms were on someone else's shoulders, someone I recognized instantly. He was that gym trainer she used to talk about. The one with the big shoulders and that goofy nose, like a potato stuck in the middle of his face. She said he was hilarious, always making the group laugh, always encouraging people to work harder. I never paid much attention, never got jealous. I guess I trusted her. Or maybe I just didn't think I had anything to worry about. After all, I was the husband. We'd been married 15 years. Things weren't perfect, but I sure didn't expect to walk in and see that. I stood there, not even breathing. They didn't see me at first. The curtains were half drawn, letting in a dim light, enough to show me her face turned upward, eyes shut, mouth open, like she was in some state of relief. Or joy. Or something I never gave her. That's how it felt, anyway. Like I was watching a scene in a movie where I didn't belong. They shifted, and her eyes flickered open. She saw me. I saw panic bloom across her face. He moved too, twisting around, half falling off the bed. A pillow dropped on the floor. Then there was just a lot of stumbling. She started to speak, but I didn't stick around to listen. My chest felt like someone punched a hole right through it. My hands went numb. I didn't scream or throw things or curse. That might have been easier. Instead, I just stood there for a second, letting the image burn into my memory, her on top of him, both naked and sweaty, like I'd walked in on a scene that had been playing behind my back for who knows how long. A few seconds passed, or maybe a lifetime, I can't tell. Then I turned and walked out. I made it halfway down the stairs before I realized I was shaking. Not violently, but enough to notice my steps were unsteady. I gripped the banister. I don't remember hearing her call my name, though maybe she did. I don't remember him saying anything. I just kept moving down, step by step. When I reached the kitchen, the overhead light felt too bright, too normal. That fridge was still dead, quiet as a tomb. My 2 fish were still on the counter, starting to smell a bit rank in the warmth. I picked up my car keys from the bowl by the door. I walked outside. The sunshine stabbed my eyes. I got in the car. In the rearview mirror, I saw my own face looking back, pale and stiff. It didn't look like me. It looked like a man who just discovered the world was a lie. I started the engine. My mind was blank except for one thought: I need ice. That was it. I couldn't process the rest. The fridge, the fish, the discovery upstairs, everything collapsed into a single priority: ice. I backed out of the driveway and drove to the gas station down the street. Didn't say a word to the cashier. Just grabbed a couple of bags, tossed them in the trunk, and headed back. When I walked inside the house again, I didn't hear anything. No sounds. Maybe they were upstairs getting dressed, or maybe he jumped out the window. I didn't care. It was like I was on autopilot. I took the fish, put them in the plastic tub, layered the ice around them until they were covered. The condensation on the outside of the bags dripped onto the tile. I knelt there, pressing the cubes into place, feeling the cold sting my fingertips. My mind was blank. Still no shouting, no confrontation. In movies, this is where the husband storms in, breaks furniture, maybe yells. Why? But I'm not that guy. I guess I never was. I just do what needs doing. And right then, I needed to save those fish. Only after I was done did I notice my heart was pounding. I looked at the clock. Barely noon. I realized I couldn't stay in that house. It felt wrong. Contaminated, almost. So I walked out again. Didn't say a word. I heard a voice from upstairs, maybe hers, but I didn't catch the words. In that moment, the only thing I wanted was distance. I got in my car and drove off with no plan. The only place that came to mind was the gym. That same gym where she met him, the one I'd only visited once or twice to pick her up after her sessions. I hated gyms in general. The smell, the mirrors, the fake smiles. But it was a place away from home, so I headed there on instinct, not thinking about what I was going to do next. On the way, I rolled down the window, let the air hit my face. I tried to wrap my head around what I'd seen. My wife, my partner of so many years, naked with some clownish trainer who'd probably joked about me behind my back. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. But still no tears. No rage. Just a hollow feeling, like someone had carved out the inside of my chest. I could still smell the fish on my hands. That tangy, raw scent that told me something had died. Maybe that was me. I pulled into the gym parking lot, turned off the engine, and just sat there. The sign on the building was bright and cheerful. People were walking in and out with water bottles, yoga mats, talking about weekend plans. I was too numb to think. I stayed in the car for a few minutes, then decided I needed to do something. Anything. I didn't realize that something would become the start of a plan, a real twisted plan. I just knew I couldn't go back home. So I climbed out of the car and walked through those gym doors, still wearing my fishing jacket, still stinking of trout. That's how my day started, the day everything fell apart. And in some strange way, it was also the day I started piecing together what came next. I never felt so unanchored in my life. I stood in the lobby, breathing in that strong mix of sweat and disinfectant. A couple of folks came in behind me, squeezing past. I glanced at a wall clock, 12:25. Less than an hour since I found them. My phone was buzzing in my pocket. I figured it was her. Maybe she was texting me, calling, trying to explain. But I didn't reach for it. I stared at the digital screens behind the reception desk. They showed membership deals, class schedules, personal training packages. Her trainer, this clown with the big nose, his picture used to be on one of these screens. A big grin, "You can do it!" motto. I didn't see it now, but I remembered the face. Hard to forget once you've seen him naked with your wife. The young woman behind the desk gave me a half smile. "Can I help you?" I didn't answer right away. My hands were still shaking a bit, but I tried to hide it by shoving them in my pockets. She wore a name tag that said, Dana. She was in her early 20s, maybe. I looked at the array of brochures in front of her. Finally I said, "I want to buy a membership." "Sure," she replied. She slid a form across the counter. "We have a couple different tiers. Any preference?" I just shook my head. My mouth felt dry. My mind was working, though, in a slow, methodical way, like I was putting puzzle pieces together. I knew his name. I knew his email, because one time she'd shown me some motivational newsletter he wrote for his clients. I knew enough. My heart was still hammered to a pulp from what I'd seen, but my brain latched onto an idea. Petty, maybe? But it was something. "Give me the top tier," I said. "Full year." She nodded, handed me a pen. I took it, but instead of writing my own info, I wrote his name. The trainer's name. Let's call him Brad, for the sake of telling it like it happened. I wrote his name, used his email, scratched down some random address. Dana didn't check a thing. She just typed away, asked how I'd be paying. I pulled out a card I'd kept stashed. It was the same card my wife and I used for groceries. The one she insisted I carry. Just in case. I used it now, because it felt right, using our shared money for this. Anger flared in my chest, hot and cold at the same time. Dana asked what kind of classes I was interested in. I said, "Women's yoga." She blinked, gave me a look, but didn't protest. The system let her pick an option, so she did. I paid in full for a year. She printed a receipt in Brad's name. I stuffed it in my jacket pocket. I turned around and left. Didn't even glance at the row of treadmills or the big mirrors on the walls. Outside, I sank into the driver's seat, exhaled. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Part of me wondered if I'd just done something insane. Another part felt a quiet satisfaction. I thought, let's see how he likes the idea of receiving emails about women's yoga classes for the next year. It was petty, yeah, but it gave me a weird sense of control. I didn't go home. I found a diner, sat in a booth, and stared at a menu for a good while. The waitress asked if I wanted coffee. I nodded. Took a sip, tasted nothing. My brain was on autopilot. Scenes flashed before me, her face in that bedroom, the trainer's body under hers, the shape of his nose, the lines of her shoulders. My hand clenched around the mug until my knuckles hurt. I reminded myself to breathe. At some point, my phone buzzed again. I finally glanced at it. 5 missed calls from my wife. A couple of texts. One said, "Please come back. Let's talk." Another said, "I'm sorry." And another, "It's not what you think." That made me want to laugh, but I just stared at the words. I locked the phone and slid it face down on the table. Couldn't do it. Couldn't read anymore. Couldn't handle the sound of her voice. The waitress asked if I was ready to order. I just shook my head. I left a few bucks on the table for the coffee, walked out. Drove around for a while aimless. Passed by a drugstore, pulled in, grabbed a pack of gum. Then I saw the aisle with over-the-counter meds. Laxatives caught my eye. The idea flashed. Ridiculous, childish, and yet I felt a surge of adrenaline. I dropped a box into my basket, went to check out. The cashier rang it up like it was the most normal thing in the world. I stuffed it in a plastic bag and walked out. I sat in the car, holding that bag. I thought, am I really going to do this? People cheat all the time, or so the stories go. I always figured if it happened to me, I'd just walk away. But something in me snapped the moment I saw them together, like I wanted him to pay. Maybe I should have turned my anger on her. But it was easier to focus on him. He was the intruder, the clown, the motivator with a big nose. My head buzzed with the possibilities. Eventually, I drove back to the gym. It was a little after 2 in the afternoon. Peak hours. The lot was more crowded now. I felt my heart pounding. I didn't know if Brad would be there, but I had a hunch. Saturdays were busy, and he was a popular trainer. I walked in, tried to look casual. The same girl at the front desk was still there but busy talking to someone else. I slipped past toward the row of lockers. I knew they kept a rack of water bottles in the main area, labeled with names, so trainers and staff could grab theirs anytime. I wandered around until I spotted it, a black bottle with Brad scrawled in silver marker. I recognized it from the times my wife had pointed it out, saying how he always stayed hydrated, how dedicated he was. The memory gave me a bitter taste in my mouth. I glanced around. People were too focused on their workouts to pay attention to me. I unscrewed the top, tore open the box of laxative tablets in my jacket pocket, crushed a handful with the back of a pen, and funneled the powder into the bottle. My hands were shaking, but I managed. Then I filled the bottle at the nearby water fountain. The lumps dissolved, mostly. I screwed the lid back on, placed it right where I found it, and walked away. I felt sick to my stomach. My legs were weak, and my chest was tight. But a grim satisfaction pulsed through me, a sense of finality. Maybe this was just the start of something ugly. Or maybe it was my one petty shot. I headed for the exit, passing a row of people stretching on yoga mats. Some older man gave me a curious look, probably because I was wearing jeans and a fishing jacket in a place full of spandex and neon sneakers. In the car, I slumped in the seat. My phone buzzed again. I saw more texts from her, but I just turned the device off. Didn't want to think. Then I pictured him taking a long swig of that water, sweaty from a training session, clueless. Part of me felt bad, like I'd lowered myself to some middle school prank. Another part of me relished the idea of him squirming, trying to keep his composure. Maybe he'd dart to the bathroom, making a fool of himself in front of everyone. I told myself, that's what you get for sleeping with a married woman. I sat there for a while, letting the adrenaline subside. The day was warm and bright. People came in and out of the gym, glancing at me through the windshield. I didn't care. I wondered if he'd already drunk it, or if he'd noticed something was off. The doubt gnawed at me. But I was too messed up in the head to stick around and see the results. I started the engine and drove off. Back at the house, I wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe her waiting by the door, tears in her eyes, bag packed, or maybe him still there. But the place was empty and quiet. The smell of dead fish and melting ice filled the kitchen. I checked the tub, still cold. So at least that was okay. The fridge sat there like a useless block. I went upstairs, bedroom door was wide open now, bed unmade, her clothes gone. I didn't bother to fix anything. I just stared for a moment, saw the imprint of 2 bodies on the sheets. My stomach turned. I went down the hall, grabbed a duffel bag, threw in random clothes. Socks, shirts, underwear, a pair of jeans. Didn't overthink it. Then I headed out again. Before I left, I placed my wedding ring on the counter beside the fridge. I didn't fling it across the room or set it on fire. Just set it down gently, like it was worthless but still needed a place to rest. I got in the car and realized I had nowhere to go. My brother lived up in Montana. We weren't super close, but we stayed in touch. We used to fish together when we were younger. Maybe he'd let me crash on his couch. I couldn't stand the thought of staying in this town anymore. Not with memories of them in my bed. So I drove to the bank, withdrew everything from our joint account. There wasn't a fortune in there, but enough to keep me afloat for a while. I remember the teller glancing at me oddly, but she didn't ask questions. Then I got back in the car and sat there. I thought about calling her, asking a million questions, screaming, demanding answers. But I realized it wouldn't help. The moment I saw them, the marriage was over in my mind. There was no going back. I texted her just one word. Done. That's it. Then I shut off my phone again. My plan was to leave town by nightfall, drive until I couldn't see straight, find a motel, and then keep going until I got to Montana. That's what I did, more or less. In the rearview mirror, the sun was dipping behind the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and reds. I felt no beauty in it, no sense of wonder. Just a numbness that was heavier than anything I'd ever carried. I stayed on the road for a full day, stopping only for gas and a few hours' sleep in a cheap motel. I didn't turn my phone on until I crossed into Montana. When I finally did, there were over 50 missed calls and twice as many texts. Most from her. A few from a number I didn't recognize, but I guessed it was him. Brad. The trainer. Probably wanting to talk, or maybe threaten me. I didn't check. Just deleted them all. Clean slate, I told myself. Didn't feel clean, though. I called my brother from a payphone at some dusty truck stop. Told him I was coming. He said I could crash at his place for a bit. He didn't ask for details, but he sounded worried. That's the way he is, quiet concern, no prying. Good enough. When I showed up at his doorstep late that night, he just opened the door and said, "Come on in." No big scene. I like that. He let me sleep in the spare room, which was basically a small storage space with a cot. He offered me a beer, which I took. We drank in silence. Eventually, he cleared his throat and asked if I was okay. I just shook my head. I'm not a crier, but in that moment, I felt tears well up. I forced them back, said, "I just need some time." He nodded and didn't push. Those days in Montana passed in a haze. I picked up odd jobs here and there, helped a local rancher fix fences, did some handyman stuff for people around town. Kept my mind busy. My wife, ex-wife I guess, sent me emails daily at first. They all said variations of, "I'm sorry I was weak, it was a mistake," or, "Let's talk this through." I deleted them without replying. Eventually she stopped. That was a relief. The sight of her name in my inbox brought a stabbing ache in my gut. I didn't want that. About 6 months later, a letter came. Not from her, but from some law office in our old town. I recognized the return address. It was a paternity testing service. My heart pounded. Years ago, there was a question about our son's medical condition, and the doctors did a bunch of tests. So I'd seen that address before. But I had no clue why they were writing me now. I took it inside, sat at my brother's cluttered kitchen table, and opened the envelope. Inside was a typed document that said something like, "Based on the DNA samples provided, the alleged father, my name, is excluded as the biological father of my son's name. Probability of paternity 0%. My eyes skimmed that line over and over. At first, I thought maybe it was some old mistake. Then I noticed the date. It was recent. I stared at that page so long that the letters blurred. Turns out, while I'd been gone, she must have filed for some official test, or maybe the son had insisted. I don't know who arranged it. But the result was right there. He wasn't mine. The boy I'd raised since birth, taught to fish, read bedtime stories to, lost sleep over when he had fevers, wasn't my blood. My brain went straight to that big-nosed trainer. My son, who I still thought of as my son, had that same shape to his nose, that same grin. I realized the truth, it wasn't a new affair. This was going back 16 years, or close to it. She'd probably known all along that I wasn't his father. Maybe she wasn't even sure at first. But the kid sure ended up with a nose like a potato. I didn't rage. I just sat there. My brother came home, saw me at the table with that paper, asked what happened. I told him. "He's not mine." That's all I could say. My brother's face went pale. He put a hand on my shoulder. I shrugged it off, not because I was angry at him, but because I was too numb. The betrayal felt deeper than anything else I'd experienced. She not only cheated on me, she'd let me believe that boy was mine all those years. And I loved that boy. God, I loved him. I taught him how to hold a fishing rod, how to set the hook when he felt a bite. I stayed up nights when he had nightmares about the monsters under his bed. He was a sweet kid, shy and kind. Now everything felt like a lie. The next day, I got an email from him. My son, ex-son, I guess. He must have gotten my address from somewhere, or maybe he just had it from before. The email said, Dad, Mom told me you left because of something she did, but I don't know what. I just miss you. Please talk to me. I love you. Reading that made my heart twist. He didn't understand. He had no clue. I typed back. Ask your mother about the DNA test. I hit send. Seconds later, I felt regret. The heartbreak in his words was real. But I was too broken to be gentle. He wrote back. She said it was a mistake. I don't believe it. I want you to come home. I stared at that message a long time, my throat tight. Then I remembered the test results, the big-nosed trainer, the bedroom scene. All of it flooded back. I replied with two things, a photo of that clown, Brad, beside a photo of my son. Their noses were identical. In the message I wrote, Now you understand who you are. Then I pressed send. He didn't respond after that. He deleted his account or blocked me, I guess. That same day, my brother saw me throw my phone against the wall. I just snapped. The phone shattered. A piece of it clattered on the floor. I stared at the broken chunks, feeling nothing but emptiness. My brother tried to help, but I told him to let me be. He left me alone with that letter and the broken phone. A couple days later, I got word that my wife was looking for me in town. She tried to call my brother, left messages saying she needed to see me face to face. I wanted no part of it. The next morning, a thick envelope arrived, divorce papers she'd filed. She must have realized I wasn't coming back. It was all pretty standard. She wanted to split the house, assets, the usual. I'd already drained the account, though. I remember flipping through the forms, noticing one line about custody. We never had it set up legally, but there was some mention of me giving up rights. That was a stab in the gut, like she was making it official that he wasn't my son. But it also felt like a dark favor. Freed me from the last tie to that place. I signed the papers. Left them on my brother's table. Told him to mail them back. He looked at me, concerned. You sure this is how you want it? I nodded. Couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. I spent a few more weeks in Montana, drifting through each day. I helped out at a local repair shop, changed tires, hammered nails for folks. Anything to keep my hands busy. Nights were the worst. I'd lay in bed, replaying everything, seeing that bedroom scene. Then the next big blow, the test results telling me my boy wasn't mine. I'd stare at the ceiling until dawn. That's when I'd get up, feed my brother's dog, and go about my day like a shell of a person. One morning, I got an email from the realtor I'd contacted months ago. She said we had a solid offer on the house back in our old town. She needed my signature to finalize. My wife had apparently agreed to the sale. I told the realtor to take it. I'd get my share. I printed out the forms, signed, and faxed them back. Just like that, the house was gone. The life I knew, gone. I pictured them rummaging through whatever was left in those rooms, dividing furniture. But I didn't care. Let them have it. Later that day, my bank statement showed a hefty deposit from the house sale. I opened a new account, put the money there, and closed the joint account. She tried to call me again, some unknown number I didn't recognize, but I knew it was her. I let it go to voicemail. She left a long, halting message about wanting to see me, talk about the future, figure things out for our son's sake. I pressed delete without listening to the end. I guess that was the moment I finally cut all ties. No more illusions, no more hope of patching things up, no more father-son bond. I was alone. And in a strange way, that gave me a twisted sense of clarity. I left my brother's place with a simple goodbye. Told him I appreciated everything, slipped a couple $100 in his drawer to cover some food costs, and the time I'd crashed there. He didn't want to take it, but I insisted. Then I got in my car, an old sedan that coughed black smoke when I revved the engine, and headed back toward that town I once called home. Not to see her. Not to see my son. Just to tie up any loose ends. On the drive, I thought about the divorce. How final it felt. How I hadn't looked her in the eyes since I walked out that day. Didn't plan to either. What was there to say? I pictured her tear-streaked face, or maybe she'd gone cold too. Hard to guess. I wanted to skip that entire scenario and just do whatever I had to do, then leave again. By the time I arrived, it was late. I pulled into a cheap motel on the outskirts. Same chain as before, maybe even the same scratchy bedspread. I dropped my duffel bag, lay on the bed, and stared at the ceiling fan. The next morning, I drove through the old neighborhood. A sold sign sat in front of my former house. A pang hit me as I imagined all the days I'd pulled into that driveway, tired from work, with groceries in the trunk. The times I'd carried my little boy in my arms through that front door, back when I thought he was mine. Memories I couldn't erase. The windows were dark, the mailbox stuffed with junk. I didn't stop. I drove to the gym. I'm not sure why. Part of me wanted to see if that trainer was still working there, leading classes, smirking with his potato nose. Maybe I wanted to confront him. But when I pulled up, I noticed a help wanted sign taped on the door. Then I remembered the last time I'd been here, how I'd humiliated him in front of everyone with that water bottle stunt. I heard rumors through some texts that he'd actually lost his job because it caused such a scene. Some clients had posted videos online. The thought made me grin for a second. Petty revenge. But it didn't erase the bigger betrayal. Still, it was something. I parked down the street and walked around. The place was locked up, a sign on the window reading, "Under renovation." I peered through the glass. Everything looked half-emptied. Treadmills gone, some walls stripped of mirrors, just bits of construction tape. It was like the gym was a ghost of its former self. I felt a small spark in my chest. Maybe the owners were selling. Then a wild idea crossed my mind: buy the place myself. It made no sense. I hated gyms. But I had money now from the house. And something in me wanted to own that space. To erase any trace of him, or her, or their affair. I think I also wanted a place to bury my pain, to take control of the very spot that symbolized their betrayal. A twisted form of closure. That day, I made some calls. Tracked down the property manager. Found out the gym was indeed for sale, the previous owners folding. The price wasn't cheap, but I had enough. Over the next few weeks, I went through the paperwork. I didn't tell anyone, didn't celebrate. Just quietly signed the documents, wrote the checks, and secured the deal. Boom. The place was mine. Walking inside for the first time as the owner felt surreal. I ran my fingers along the peeling paint, the scuffed floors. I pictured all those sweaty people, the lines of machines. I remembered glimpses of him, the trainer, standing by the squat rack with a whistle or whatever it was he used. I remembered my wife picking up her yoga mat near the front desk. It gave me a chill. So I began the purge. I got rid of everything. Sold the treadmills, ellipticals, free weights, punching bags, every piece of equipment. Hauled them out on trucks, sent them to the scrapyard if no one else wanted them. Some employees who were still around asked me what the plan was. I didn't give them details. Just said, "We're closing." A few got angry, demanded to know if they'd be paid severance. I told them I'd mail them checks for any outstanding wages, but that I wasn't keeping them on. No one from the old place would remain. I wanted a clean slate. More than that, I wanted no eyewitnesses to the memories that haunted me. In a matter of weeks, the inside looked like a shell. Bare walls, concrete floors. I hired a couple guys to repaint everything white. They worked fast, coated the entire place from floor to ceiling, until it felt like a blank canvas. Then I put up a sign in the window with a new name, just a single word, something plain, so it was obvious this wasn't a gym anymore. Sharps. My last name is Sharp, ironically. But I liked how it sounded, given my next plan, a workshop for sharpening knives. Why knives? Maybe because I'd always found a certain calm in the precision of it. Over the years, I'd sharpened my fishing knives, hunting knives, kitchen blades. It was a quiet task that required focus. And right then, I wanted my life to be about focus and nothing else. So I installed a few heavy tables, got a good grinding wheel, some specialized stones. Brought in my own lights, set up a ventilation system. Little by little, the place transformed from a neon fitness center into a stark workshop that smelled like metal and oil. I didn't plan on opening it to the public, not really. I just wanted a place to work, to pass the hours. If a local butcher or chef needed knives sharpened, they could knock on the door, maybe I'd help them. But I wasn't advertising. I put a small sign on the door that said, "Closed," and that's how I kept it. The emptiness soothed me. The whir of the grinding wheel gave me something to concentrate on. I set up a little room in the back, partitioned off by a large wooden cabinet. I had a cot, a table, a mini fridge, and a lamp. No windows. Perfect. I dragged in a trunk with my clothes, some boxes of canned goods. I basically lived there. I'd go out for groceries once a week, maybe pick up the mail. Otherwise, I stayed inside, working the metal, shaping edges, drowning in the hum of the machinery. Months passed. Sometimes, when I was standing at the wheel, sparks flying off a blade, I'd catch myself thinking about him. Wondering if he landed another job or if he was still in town. I pictured my wife, the life we had, are not really my son. I'd push those thoughts away, bury them under the hiss of steel. If you look for healing in this story, you won't find it. I wasn't healing. I was just existing, blocking out the pain with routine. At night, I'd fall asleep on that cot, listening to my own heartbeat. For the first time in months, I could close my eyes without expecting a phone call or a knock at the door. Nobody knew I lived there except maybe the mailman, and he probably thought I was a caretaker or something. I liked that anonymity. No more small-town whispers, no more pitying looks. Just me in the hush of an empty building. One evening, I stepped out front to breathe the night air. A single street lamp lit the sidewalk. The windows of my old workshop-turned-gym were dark. I caught my reflection in the glass, a tired man with lines on his face, older than I remembered. But I felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe I'd lost everything, my marriage, my son, my trust in people. But at least there was no going back. I made sure of that. Time slid by in a slow blur. No calls, no letters. I guess she realized I wasn't interested. Or maybe she got the message after the divorce went through and the house sold. My son, her son, their son, stayed silent too. That final exchange of emails was the last I heard from him. Sometimes, in the early morning, I thought about him. A flicker of guilt crept in. He was just a kid who didn't ask for any of this. Then I'd remember how my entire life turned out to be a lie. The flicker of guilt turned sour, and I'd push it away. About a year after I took over the gym, the sign outside read, "Sharps," in big black letters, but nobody came knocking. That was how I wanted it. I'd basically turned the main floor into a workshop with shelves of tools, a big bench, and random metal scraps. If you looked in from outside, it wasn't clear what was going on. I didn't keep it neat. Everything was scattered, the walls were still plain white, except for a few posters of blade angles and sharpening guides. Dust and metal shavings coated the floor. I woke up each morning, made black coffee on a little portable burner, then went straight to work. Pulling out knives, hunting knives, fishing knives, sometimes old butcher cleavers I'd pick up at pawn shops just to restore. The whir of the grinder, the scrape of the whetstone, the flick of my wrist with a leather strop. I lost hours in that process. Focus, repetition. The edge would come alive under my hands. People who say revenge heals you don't know a damn thing. The day I humiliated that trainer, the day I walked away from my wife, I thought I'd feel better. Instead, I just felt hollow. My big gesture of buying the gym, scrapping everything, and turning it into a fortress of solitude didn't bring me closure. It brought me isolation. But I clung to it. I needed it. Sometimes I'd stand by the front door at dusk, looking out at the empty street. In my head, I'd imagined them both coming by, wanting to talk. But the lock stayed bolted, and nobody knocked. Good. Because if they showed up, I wasn't sure what I'd do. Part of me wanted to lash out, part of me wanted to just sink to the floor. I knew I didn't have any big speeches left in me. No questions, no pleas. I'd run out of words the day I saw them in my bed. I'd heard from a friend, one of the few left who bothered to email me sometimes, that Brad left town after he got fired. Couldn't get work locally. People whispered about that humiliating moment at the gym. Clients didn't trust him. So he packed up and moved on. I didn't get much detail. Didn't want it. Let him go wherever. Let him have the rest of his life, just away from me. My friend also mentioned my wife. Said she tried to date some other guys, but nothing stuck. That she looked worn out, lost a lot of weight. I tried not to feel anything about that. Still, it sat in my mind sometimes, creeping in at night. One cold evening, I was cleaning up the workshop. Flicked off the grinder, let the silence fill the air. My reflection stared back at me from the big mirror I'd propped against the wall, an old mirror from the gym days that I hadn't bothered to remove yet. I saw my face, scruffy beard, lines around the eyes. I remembered how I used to watch my son in that mirror, perched on a bench while waiting for his mom. The memory stabbed. I turned away. In the corner, I had a small radio. Sometimes I'd turn it on for noise. That night, some old country station crackled through. A slow, sad tune about heartbreak. The lyrics were about a man losing his home, his woman, everything. I let it play, and for a moment I felt a lump in my throat. It was the first time I allowed myself to feel the weight of it all. My entire life, gone sideways, and me holed up here, sharpening knives in the shell of a place that used to be a gym. If that isn't the definition of messed up, I don't know what is. But I didn't cry. Instead, I killed the radio and pulled down the metal grate over the front door. No more music, no more memories. The night was quiet. I locked myself in, grabbed a bottle of cheap whiskey I kept by the grinder, took a swig. The burn felt good, like a small punishment I deserved. Days turned into weeks. I rarely left, aside from picking up supplies. I slept behind the old cabinet in my cramped room. I hung a curtain for a bit of privacy, even though no one was around. When I turned out the light, I stared into darkness, hearing my own breathing. Some nights, I slept fine. Other nights, I jolt awake, remembering the bedroom scene. My heart pounding, the memory fresh as if it happened yesterday. I never told my brother the full extent of what I was doing or how I felt. He'd call sometimes, ask if I was okay. I'd give short answers. He'd say, "You coming back anytime soon?" I'd say, "Not sure." That's how our conversations went. Then I'd hang up and get back to my tools. One morning, I found an envelope slipped under the front door. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a photograph of my son, her son, holding a fish, some kind of trout maybe, with a wide grin on his face. He looked older, taller. There was a note on the back. "He still remembers everything you taught him." No signature. I knew it was from her. Maybe she thought it would stir something in me, some fatherly love, some guilt. Maybe she wanted me to pick up the phone. I tore the photo in half, tossed it in the garbage. Then I stood there with my hands shaking, realizing I was trembling not from anger, but from pain. I hated that I missed the kid, hated that I felt used and betrayed, but also missed the bond we had. I forced myself to push forward. Each day, the same routine. Wake, sharpen, clean, eat, maybe tinker with a broken piece of machinery, try to fix it. Sleep. No friends, no visits. It was a self-imposed exile, but it worked. Over time, the memories stung a bit less. Or maybe I just got used to the sting, like a background hum in my mind. One afternoon, a knock came at the door. Startled me. I rarely heard that sound. I went to the door, didn't open it, just called out, "We're closed." A voice responded, I'm looking for a place to sharpen a set of kitchen knives. Sounded like an older man. I waited, deciding if I should ignore him. Then something in me said, at least talk to him. Might make a few bucks. I opened the door a crack. Sure enough, a gray-haired fellow with a tired smile stood there. He held a bunch of knives wrapped in a towel. Heard you might do this kind of work, he said. A friend mentioned it. I hesitated, then let him in. $15 a knife, I told him. He didn't haggle. He just nodded, set them on the table. I took them to the wheel. I spent the next hour grinding, shaping, honing. He waited quietly, watching. When I was done, he inspected each blade with a kind of reverence, like he loved those knives. He nodded in approval, counted out the cash, and handed it to me. Then he said, "You do fine work. If you ever open up for real, you'd probably make a decent living." I just shrugged. "Don't plan to," I said. "But thanks." He gave a small smile, wrapped his knives, and left. I stood there, holding the money. It was more than I expected, plus a tip. I realized I might see more folks if word got around. Part of me liked the thought of staying hidden. But another part recognized that even a hermit has to earn a living eventually. Still, none of it changed what was inside me. By the time darkness fell, I was back in that small room, sitting on my cot, staring at the wall. The memory of finding them together never left. The knowledge that my son wasn't mine still ate at me. I didn't have some grand epiphany or meltdown. I just existed. Day after day. That's the truth of it. People want a clean ending, some moral, some sense that I found peace. I didn't. I just made sure there was nowhere for them to come back to. Burned every bridge behind me. Destroyed the gym they once loved, turned it into a fortress of knives and metal dust. I'm alone here. It doesn't feel like a victory. But it feels final. At least I can breathe without waiting for the next betrayal. Nobody can reach me unless I let them. And most days I don't. So that's the end of it. There's no bow on this story, no tidy resolution. Just me, in a windowless back room of a building that used to be full of life, where now the only sound is the hum of a grinding wheel and the shuffle of my footsteps on bare concrete. And at night I sleep. The nightmares are less frequent now. Sometimes, I even manage a dreamless sleep. That's all I can ask for. That's what I have. And that's where I'll stay.